Hello, and welcome to the Three Questions Podcast, where we dive deep into the world of wealth management and connect you with industry experts. I'm your host, Wayne Baxter, Senior Executive Manager at One Capital Management. If you or someone close to you is a content creator looking to produce a U.S. Canadian cross-border production, stay tuned. We're going to address the three questions content creators should ask before establishing a U.S. Canadian cross-border production project. Thank you for taking time to check us out. And if you enjoyed this episode of the Three Questions Podcast, please consider liking this video and subscribing to our podcast and YouTube channels. On today's episode, we're exploring the world of U.S. Canadian cross-border media production. As content creators work internationally, understanding the financial and legal landscape is crucial to financing and protecting your projects and intellectual property. Joining me today is Los Angeles, California-based Nadia Davari. She is an experienced entertainment attorney with Davari Law. Nadia, great to see you. Thank you for joining us and having you on the Three Questions podcast. Great to see you.
Hi, thank you for having me, Wayne.
Yeah, great to see you. You know, I was really delighted to find out that, like yours truly, Nadia advises clients both in the U.S. and Canada. So we have something in common, other than the fact that we're both living here in Southern California, and but both of us work with cross-border clients. So it's great to have you on. And I'm sure our audience will be curious to know more about your practice, especially given like you cover a broad area of law as an attorney. You're bridging technology, entertainment, new media, and then corporate and business law. That's a pretty big palette. So maybe just give us an overview of the law firm and really about the clients that you serve as well.
Sure. So, while it sounds like it's very broad and not interconnected, but in fact, what you just mentioned, those areas of law are very much intertwined. So, you can't separate entertainment from technology. Entertainment is technology driven, and the laws are affected by how technology works and what new technologies come about. Like, for example, now with AI, it's really affecting how draft and write entertainment agreements, and all up and down from the writers' agreements all the way to distribution. So, to bring it all together, it's an attorney who does transactional work, and there are aspects of corporate law in it. You can't take that away from it. But then there are aspects of, you gotta be up to date on IP and trademark and copyright issues. And then you've got the technology side, as we just described. So they all kind of tie in together, except that, with entertainment is very specific, and it's very industry based and jargon based, and you have to kind of have a specific area knowledge of how the industry works and what the lingo is, and what are the key issues to look out for.
One of the things I've come to know about attorneys since especially since I moved here to the U.S., is that how often they regularly collaborate with each other. Like there's a good friend of mine, Janice Miller, always uses the term cooperation, right? So, what type of subject matter experts, attorneys, do you most regularly collaborate with when you're working with a client or on a project?
That's an excellent question. I
Thank
work
you.
a lot with, as you can imagine, immigration attorneys. Uh, they're an integral part of what we do. We got people coming in from
Interesting.
Canada. We've got people coming from all around the world. Just open up, any program on television or go to any movie and just look at the credits. There are international names all over it. So immigration law is very much tied into it. We also have tax issues, so tax attorneys and people who are financial advisors, such as yourself, how to set up different projects to make it more financially sound. So, in fact, we have clients to come to us from financial advisors. They have It's the end of the year. There's certain tax schemes. They want to take advantage of it. They don't want to pay taxes. They want to invest their money in projects, So there's specific rules that need to be followed. That's not my area of expertise. I don't, I'm not going to go into details of that. I have very limited general information and knowledge about that. But yeah, so those are the experts that we are constantly
Interesting. I
intersecting.
I wouldn't have guessed the immigration attorney, but I should. That's a no-brainer. Another one I would think would be probably foreign exchange people because you're transferring money across the border. So
Absolutely,
the
banker.
the forex people would definitely want to be someone that they would want to should be getting to know you as well.
Bankers, absolutely bankers. In fact, this issue came up a couple of times where money was coming in from the Middle East and overseas, and then not only Middle East, but from the Gulf states, and but also from Europe. And the banking rules have changed so much in the past few years, since September 11th and all those issues with, where traceability of funds.
Yeah,
So.
under the fintech rules, so there's a little bit more just a little bit more discerning. And the good news now is that there's a great ways of moving money legally across borders now. Again, this is my own take. I'm not saying necessarily that my friend Nadia agrees, but I would try if I'm moving large sums of money, say from Canada to the U.S. or maybe Europe to the U.S. I would try to look for working with a foreign exchange service, well, more so directly with a bank, quite frankly, because of the fact that the cost of, especially, and I think specifically being a Canadian and having gone through the exercise for myself and for my clients, the cost of moving money from a Canadian bank to a U.S. bank, the fees related to that can be rather eye-popping, shall we say? Where if you work through it with a foreign exchange service, think about my friend Craig Rothman at Odeon up in New York. I do a great job, and literally, I would say the cost is relatively speaking pennies on the dollar. So, yeah, I
Which is
definitely
where you would come into the picture,
right,
Wayne. That's why we need experts like you who can kind of navigate that and do it the most cost-effective way.
right, right.
And then
Because
also there are other issues of foreigners bringing money into the US, and then how do they bring that in, and can they own a part of a company in the US, and if they do, does that expose them to all sorts of corporate transparency
I was
act?
just going to, you took the words right out of my mouth. That's the first
Right.
thing.
And then also other tax consequences, or do they now have to disclose everything they've got all around the world? And you've got to disclose what foreign bank accounts you have, and is it even
100%.
I've had transactions not happen because of these issues. So experts such as yourself, people who are in the world of money and moving money, are very integral to what we do.
Well, I'm glad I had you on, and I think this is an interesting topic. So, what we're going to discuss today, and we're going to talk a little bit, it's from a financial perspective, but we're going to
Mhm.
talk about content creation and
Mhm.
specifically the three questions content creators should ask before establishing a US Canadian cross border production project. Now, obviously, the role that I play, many of my clients are cross border clients. They're either residents of the United States or Canada. So that's why we're focusing specifically on that US Canadian narrative, if you will. This conversation, I think, is going to be pretty content deep, and I hope you find it valuable. So let's get right into the questions. Nadia, you ready to go? Get right to question number one. We're going to talk about this now. Question number one. Again, this is through the lens of a content creator.
Mhm.
Question one: what are the tax benefits of cross-border production? So, Nadia, I'm going to put this one on your lap.
Sure. So the question you're asking is a very broad question, right?
Understood.
So it always depend what did I say? The devil is in the details, right? It really depends on um what you're producing, what you're creating, and what's the budget and what you're trying to do, right?
Hmm.
So there's benefit for US companies going into Canada. We have that happening a lot. For example, there's certain provinces that have tax incentives, and then you've got the government incentives, Canadian government incentives, and then there's specific ways of if you set it up, then you get TV, deals which give you money up front. These are very, very valuable in this area of making content, right? Kind of going into the black before you even are done and financing the project ahead of time, what we call pre-sales, and getting those distribution agreements, but then it has to comply with certain requirements of how the content is made, what the content is about, who owns it, how it's done, right? So sometimes it really makes sense to go across the border and take advantage of those tax incentives, provincial, governmental, and then, the other pre-sales that are available. Sometimes it makes sense to come over here. I've done it both ways. I've had it go both ways. I have I'm working on a project right now that is being funded by a Canadian financing company, but it's being made in the US. And that's because, it was more beneficial to do it here. It's a big budgeted movie and it has big name talent in it. And the talent is Canadian, as you can guess. Canadian, American, and international, people from the UK, big names that you would know. And this particular financing company decided to do it here, and I'm working very closely with the Canadian attorney, and then we're setting it up in a state where it's very, they have very nice tax credits, you know, and so they've decided to do it here because the story is more conducive to an American location, and the more of the actors are available here, right? So it's being done here. Whereas, I've worked on animated projects before. There's certain provinces in Canada that are very friendly to making animated projects, and then there are local incentives as well. And then so you go over there and the facilities are world class, right? So you have great talent that is right there, and it's close to the US, so it's very easy to do business. And we're all speaking English. That's another incentive, right? So it helps to have that proximity of culture, language, and distance, right? So those are some of the reasons why you would go back and forth. And then let us not forget, you've got talent, Canadian talent that comes over all the time, right?
More than aware of it. I think my friends in America will be surprised to find out how many of the people they see on TV or in movies are actually born in Canada.
Yes,
100%.
yes. A lot of the comedians are Canadian.
I know a few
Yes.
for sure. Okay, so that's sort of segue into question number two. In terms of what are some of the benefits of cross-border production in Canada? Like how would you respond to that question?
We kind of did go
In a
over that.
way, yeah, I realize we're kind of covering two things at once here, but just to circle back and I'd also say from that standpoint, and just to add to it, for Canadian content creators, some of the benefits of cross-border production going the other way. So you
Yeah,
mentioned,
we kind of merging the two questions together. They
right.
go hand in hand, right?
Yeah, so
Yeah.
the idea is quite frankly that there's some financial benefits and tax benefits going either direction. But
Yes.
it just
Yes. It just depends, right? It depends on what the project is, what the content is, what you're trying to do, where your talent is, right? So like we said, it's really uh it's very the devil is in the detail. It depends on what it is that you
yeah, and that kind of leads me to sort of a follow-up question of where do people find the financing? Is it tougher? Like, based on your experience, Dan, is it tougher to get financing in Canada or the US, or is that a sort of typical lawyer answer? It depends. I've become trained.
Yes, you're a good student. It really
Yeah.
depends. It really depends on the project, the package, who's attached, who's doing the writing, who's directing. It really is very much, and then there's an element of whether somebody likes it. It's just, a personal choice, right? Is art at the end of the day. But this is also a business, is
100%.
entertainment business, right? And if you do things right, you can make money and be profitable, right? And also many times people want to take advantage of tax incentives and tax schemes for their personal income taxes, right? So that's when you really need to speak with a experienced tax lawyer that knows entertainment law, and then accountants. You want to be with the CPAs and the accountants who know this area of, the entertainment business well. So all these financial wizards, you're right, and professionals such as yourself and the accountants and the CPAs are an integral part of how you set this up and what would make sense, right? And then you might have a financier in the US that I actually worked on a project, is a Canadian project and Canadian story, but the producer is Canadian American. He's now in the US, but he really wants to make this story. It's an epic story, very big budget, and some of the money's coming from Canada, some of the money's coming from here, and he's gone to his personal friends and they've like put the budget together. And then some of it is going to be shot in Canada because it has to do with the Canadian Air Force, and they've been able to secure, you know, planes that were actually used in a certain battle and all sorts of things. I can't really go into too much detail, as you can imagine. But
Well, I'll be waiting for you to give me a heads up when it finally makes it to the screen. So from the financing standpoint, do you find based on your experience that it really is the same on either side of the border? Like you mentioned that you have this case where you have a Canadian production, they basically raise the money in the US. So do you find the Canadian content creators are coming to you and they're having bigger challenges of raising cash than the US ones based on the experience that you have?
that's an interesting question because in the US we're free market, right? We don't really have, like, say in Europe where the government subsidizes the arts, right? And
Hmm.
um this is really a limited scope of Canada, US, but it kind of goes, along with a lot of co-productions that are done in Europe. And why? Because the governments there support the arts and then they give you money to make it with no strings attached, right? Whereas here, you have to raise the money yourself and you have to pay back the money to the people who gave you the money, right?
Hmm.
So, but then there's no free lunch. There are things that you give up and things that you gain, right? If you
I
want to,
would imagine so.
so if you want to use,
I'm thinking about about contract compromises to the content, but that's just my.
no, that you're absolutely correct. Actually, that's exactly, you took the words out of my mouth. That's oh, so it has to be like a Canadian content. It has to have a certain number of Canadian actors, writers,
Right,
what we call elements, right? And then
right.
below the line and above the line. So exactly what you said. And that's what a producer does. A producer puts the package together, brings the money, and kind of figures out the logistics of what makes more sense. So although it might be that it's very is much more conducive as far as tax schemes in Canada, it could be that all the other you know elements are so hard to bring together that you wind up doing it in the US anyway, right?
Hmm.
So um uh, that's why the phrase "it depends," right?
The pat answer to every question I've ever had asked any of my friends who are attorneys. It
And we're
depends.
not trying to obfuscate, right? We're not trying
No,
to,
but in fact, they're being very honest and truthful because there are so many conditions that can change. But
exactly. There's so many things to consider.
right, understood.
Like
Well,
you could start as a full-on Canadian production and then decide that no, it's better that it's American. Or you can decide you start as an American project and wind up being a Canadian. Or you could even do a co-production. You might do half of it here, half of it there, you know? So it really does depend.
and thank God we have you here to help people get this across the finish line. So before you wrap this up, I'm really happy we had you on. I actually it was very educational. What mistakes, this is something I want you to try to share with our people listening or watching in today. What mistakes would you warn content creator, US or Canadian based, to avoid making? What are some of the things that, ignorance is bliss and the mother of adventure, right? That you want to
No,
draw
no.
people's attention to?
No, this is such a good question, and I lecture on this all the time. This is like my pet peeve. In fact, I was at a screening and it was a USC professor, film school professor, and I said, please, I will offer my services free. Let me come and speak to your students, right? Let me prepare them for the real world. And I've actually spoken at film schools, UCLA and USC before. And a lot of people think these are my friends. We're just putting a project together. We don't need any contracts.
There are no friends in business, folks. Rule number 1A. Thing.
Yeah.
The
Why should
hippie
I?
handshake, right? We want to avoid that's my term, I guess. The hippie handshake, right?
Right. And the napkin deals, right? We have all heard of the napkin deals. Actually, the napkin deals, I don't mind because that's actually
There's something written
right,
down at
right,
least.
right. The pet peeve of mine is where, especially with young people or people
These young people.
who are just starting, right? Oh, this is just my friend. This is my friend. We're just writing something together. Oh, we're just shooting something and we're putting it on the internet. If I could tell you of all the projects, things that you've heard of, who all the problems that have happened, and then people start doing stuff and they think, oh, I don't need a lawyer. Who wants a lawyer? It's just a lawyer. They're going to make it difficult. They're just lawyers, right? They're going to charge us money and they don't really do anything anyway, right? And then something happens and then they come to me. And now I have to go back and clean up messes. Yeah. So,
So a part of the services that you provide are not just the formation of these infrastructures beforehand, but you're the person they go
after the
to
fact.
when what hits the fan. You're the one that comes that they have to talk to and say, "Help me." And
Mm-hmm.
that friend of mine, that very best friend of mine now, is not even talking to me. Or
Mm-hmm.
they say they owe me, I owe them a whole bunch of money, or
Mm-hmm. Or I wrote it,
fill
but
in
I'm
the
not
blanks. I
getting
mean,
any credit.
your list of possible responses here are clearly larger than mine, but
Or I have a company distributing my movie, but I'm not getting anything from them. Did you read the contract before you
what
sign?
contract? Excuse me. What contract? Oopsie.
Did you negotiate anything? Did you write anything down with your writing partner? Did you talk about who was going to make decisions, how you were going to make decisions, if somebody wanted to walk away, how you would walk away?
Well, I think we've just made a case that maybe Nadia, content creators should be contacting you before they, before they jump into the deep end of the pool. Or, one of my really good friends of mine said to me many years ago, um, he said, Wayne, it's better to act than be acted upon.
So I will leave you with this thought. Persians have a saying, they say it's better to have a fight in the beginning than to fight a big battle at the end.
Yeah, there you go. Words of wisdom. Okay, so for those who are watching on the YouTube channel, they're seeing your name, your contact information right there. It's right in front of them. But we have, folks listening in on podcasts here. And for those folks, could you share with us what is the best way for them to contact you? Maybe they're thinking of becoming a content creator, or they already are, and they're saying, you know what, she's right, I need to talk to her. What's the best way for them to contact you?
So that's very easy. My email is Nadia@nadiadavari.com. They can drop me a note, or they can call my office and I can give you the
Yeah,
number.
give us the number right now.
310-564-6967. Drop me a
Perfect.
note, give me a call. We're here to help.
Nadia, this was fun, right?
Very much so. I
I,
hope you found it
I
interesting.
told you we'd have a good time. I got a sense at the beginning you were wondering, I don't know. Well, listen, you were a great guest. I'm really happy we had you on. Thanks again to Los Angeles, California-based Nadia Davari of Davari Law, and we'll have to have you come back one time again.
Love to. Thank you so much, Wayne.
Thank you, Nadia. You take care.
Bye-bye.
I look forward to bringing you the 3-Question Podcast, and I hope you find them educational and informative. Please consider liking this video and subscribing to our podcast and YouTube channels. And to receive a notification of when our latest episode has been posted, please click on the notifications bell. Lastly, to schedule an online Zoom consultation with me to discuss your wealth management needs, please click on the link in the description box below, www.onecapital.com/meet with Wayne. Thank you, and we'll see you soon.